Well, joining us now is a familiar face to This Is the Day. Author Anthony DeStefano is back to share his new children's book with us, and it's called Your Valentine.
That's appropriate.
Yeah, very appropriate. And it explores the Catholic roots of Valentine's Day. Thanks so much for being with us today. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Great to have you back.
Now, much of the audience has heard, Anthony, about St. Valentine's. A matter of fact, I've got to hear about him a little more because I've got to get presents for my wife or I'll be in big trouble. But can you tell us what you learned about him doing your research for the book?
Sure. Well, Valentine's Day is one of those feasts that have been heavily, let's say, rebranded by the culture. In fact, some would say that it's been hijacked by Hallmark. In the modern world, Valentine's Day means chocolates and flowers and cards and mushy rom-com movies. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's definitely a place for that. I'm Italian. I love romance. But not many people, including not many Catholics, know that there's a real Christian saint and martyr behind the holiday. And this book tells the story of Saint Valentine, who was a 3rd century martyr who was killed by the Romans for marrying Christian couples at a time when it was illegal for Christians to marry. It was illegal because Christian married men didn't want to fight in all of Rome's wars. And in this story, we see how Valentine's great faith in Christ and his belief in sacrificial love transformed the lives of 2 children that he meets in prison, and also a mean, angry jailer, and subsequently influenced generations to come. And regarding what I learned about the story, the true story, the Church has for centuries venerated a saint named Valentine who was martyred in the year 273 on February 14th. Historically, there are actually multiple saints named Valentine. Could have been a priest, could have been a bishop. The early records don't give us a modern biography. But he was there at a time when there was great persecution of Christians, and he died because of trying to keep the tenets of the Catholic faith at that time.
Funny story, Anthony. When we were in Rome once, Jay, we weren't supposed to go in with any cameras into the church where Valentine's relic, his skull, is. But Jay went right in there anyways with a camera, and he recorded it. But speaking of Valentine's relics and skull, the Roman government was not real happy with anyone who had this Christian faith in those days. So what does Valentine's role teach children?
Well, children live under authority, parents, principals, teachers, coaches, so they understand what power is. What they don't always understand is that while it's important to respect power and to obey legitimate authority, like your parents and teachers, power can also be used in the wrong way. And sometimes, and they learn this later in life, the bravest and best thing you can do in your life is to obey God rather than the crowd, rather than what everyone else in authority might be saying. In this story, the emperor offers Valentine a way out of martyrdom. Compromise your faith. Stop defending Christian marriage. Then you'll be safe. Then you'll be my friend. And that's a temptation children face in smaller ways. Just laugh at that mean joke. Just tease that little kid over there. Just say those bad words. Just look at those provocative images. And later on, when they get older, they face even more serious temptations to unchastity, promiscuity, addictive behaviors, cruelty, abortion, so many things that those in authority say is okay. But Valentine's response in this story is clear. Sometimes you have to buck the crowd, and some things are worth fighting for and even worth dying for.
Yeah, be your own person. Can you tell us a little bit about the illustrator of the book and why you chose him?
Sure. The illustrator his name is Antonio Javier Caparo. Beautiful name. And he did a previous book for me called How the Angels Got Their Wings. And I chose him not just because of his great technical skill, although he has tremendous amount of that. I chose him because his work has a kind of cinematic quality. He uses this glowing type of Rembrandt light and very expressive faces and big panoramic images that make you feel like you're actually stepping into ancient Rome. And these effects, they matter because children, they feel picture books before they read them and analyze them. G.K. Chesterton said, there's a line that goes straight from the eye to the heart that does not go through the brain. So you can learn truths just by looking at things sometimes. And the artwork can carry emotion and atmosphere and meaning. And Antonio's illustrations, like I said, with this great cinematic quality of his, they keep the story intense but not scary, dramatic but not grim. Exactly the right balance I think you need for dealing with challenging themes like persecution and bullying and martyrdom. And I think he did a marvelous job.
Now, what was the moment when you decided to write about St. Valentine? Was it something you've always wanted to do, or was there something that happened you said, this would just be a great story?
You know, I've always wanted to do my little part in trying to reclaim from the culture that which has been hijacked from the Catholic Church and from the Catholic tradition. So I've written 5 books on Christmas, children's books on Christmas. I wrote a story called the Story of the First Easter Bunny on Easter. I wrote a book that you had me on this show called All Hallows Eve about the true meaning of Halloween. And now this book on Valentine's Day, and I'm sure I'll do one on St. Patrick someday. The culture tries to take what is really a Catholic Christian tradition, our feast days, our saints, they try to hijack those and make them secular. And there's no reason why we as Catholics shouldn't fight a little bit for these feast days, which are so Catholic in their nature and which have given so much to Western culture. So I'm just doing my little part, I think, to try to reclaim what belongs to us.
Well, it's no little part because you're very creative, and we love having you on the show. And I hope you do write that book about St. Patrick, because I'm pastor of St. Patrick's Parish across the street, and I could sell a lot of those.
Okay, well, I will.
Okay, but back to Valentine. So we're going to be doing a giveaway after the news at the end of the show. So we hope you people stay tuned, by the way, so you can find out how to enter. But we would like to give people enough time to buy the book before Valentine's Day, you know, for their kids or grandkids. So where can they find a copy of the book and get it quickly?
Well, you know, Amazon carries all my books. Sophia Institute Press, you can get it directly from them. Barnes and Noble. I always encourage people to go to their local Catholic and Christian bookstores, those little businesses. They need our help to fight against all the conglomerates. So I try to ask people to patronize those little stores as well. But pretty much you can get them where all books are sold.
Sure.
Your Valentine. Well, thank you so much, Anthony, for being with us today. We appreciate all the time.
Thank you for having me on.
Always a pleasure.
Bye, Anthony.